The Marching Roundtable is proud to be an official media partner of Drum Corps International.
Thanks for coming to the Marching Roundtable YouTube channel, sharing great information to help you succeed in all the marching arts. While you're here, we hope you'll subscribe. Hi, this is Tim Hinton, the Beast of the Marching Arts and the host of the Marching Roundtable podcast. On this series, we talk with a private lesson teacher and performer for each instrument to tell you what you need to know to be more effective in working with those students. We hope you enjoy the series.
It's okay to put some volume behind it. And because a lot of times when I see, especially at the younger end, at the younger ages, they're telling them to play softer constantly. And maybe that's because they are just playing too loud or they just don't want to hear them because they may have a bad sound. But the real cure is that using more air more efficiently. So you have a section of trombone players sitting back there, and we're obviously very famous for being very serious people at all times, which is of course not true. We tend to be goofballs, and I think probably a lot of that stems from our parts are boring. So if you have a younger group of kids, and you're going to sit there and work with the clarinets and the flutes on the melody and stuff, it probably wouldn't hurt to write that melody out for your trombone players, just as a matter of just something to learn and something to play, and not necessarily as something you're going to put in the show, but that they're actually learning how to play different things with their horn. Because what we don't get a lot of is these melodic lines that actually challenge us a little bit. If you have kids that have their student model straight, no F attachment horn, and it's a good, decent horn, decent quality, still in good shape, don't tell them not to get rid of that. Don't sell it. Don't get rid of it. Make sure you keep it in good shape. It's actually a pretty decent horn to use in their jazz band.
This podcast is sponsored by FJM, Fred J. Miller Incorporated, found at fjminc.com. Hey everybody, it's Tim Hinton, the Beast of the Marching Arts. We are talking trombone today here on the Marching Roundtable podcast. With me today, Josh Reynolds is here. Josh, how are you?
I'm doing great, Tim. How are you?
I am good. We're going to talk all the things that everybody should know if they're working with students who are playing trombone. And Josh, I really appreciate you being here. So if you could introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, so my name's Josh. I live in Indianapolis. I'm very much involved in the music world, but I'm not a music teacher. I teach lessons and I gig, and that's kind of my music life right now. And and I teach a lot. I've been doing more teaching in schools as a guest sort of clinician, and I just work with trombone students almost exclusively at this point.
Very good. And everybody, hopefully you're watching the video version because the facial hair game is very strong today on this podcast. So Josh, I'm totally digging that beard, man. So, all right. So here's the premise. I'm a director or I'm an instructor. I'm standing in front of a group of students, maybe a concert band, maybe at a rehearsal, whatever. And there's a bunch of kids with a trombone. I want to be able to work with them the most effectively way possible. So my idea is, what could you as a trombone specialist, private teacher, all of that, tell me about trombone? Where would you start? What's the first thing you would want me to know?
So I've had a thing going on Facebook for a little while here since I started teaching more lessons and trying to be more outwardly visible in that space. I've been, and this is specifically for teachers that don't play trombone. So the first thing that I teach all my students, and this is something that when I would originally get my new students, every single one from beginners to advanced, or at least good intermediate students, they all play with their first position all the way in. And so I've made a bit of a joke about that first position is not all the way in. And so what that means is here. So I call this a storage position. This is where the slide is all the way in and it's locked. We don't play there. And the reason for that is we can make adjustments to our intonation. So I teach my students to come out about an inch from all the way in. And the more I've been teaching this and kind of spreading that message, I'm getting more feedback from teachers that they're starting noticing it now. Like when their students are, going all the way back in for first position, they start hearing, banging noises and all that stuff when they're playing, which is also obviously not good for your chops. And so I teach them day one before they've even played a note that this is storage. And then this is our playing position for first position. And Where it is exactly is not super important, just so that they're consistent with it. And then you tune to that position for your B flat, and you adjust the tuning slide from there so it gets where they're most comfortable on that. So that's what I mean when I say first position is not all the way in.
I'm so glad you had the instrument there to demonstrate, and I think that is a great place to start because anybody at any level can deal with that with trombone kids very easily.
Yeah, and that was kind of my point, like putting that on blast. Like that's a very easy fix from day one. You can teach your very first beginning students or your seniors and whatnot, and that first position is not all the way in, and we do that for a reason, so that we can make those tiny micro adjustments to intonation. And I'll get into more why that's important, specifically on the trombone. And I liken it to, if I remember, you're a French horn player.
That's right.
Right. So something that you guys might teach is like we don't just shove our hand in the bell, right? There is a way to do that.
Correct.
Right. There's a correct way to do that. And
in other words, you don't just shove your hand in the bell. There's a certain place that you put it. And this, as you know, affects tone, intonation, etc. So this, you're gonna translate this to trombone now, which I love.
Yeah. So, and every instrument has that. They have some quirk about them, like this is the way we hold drumsticks. And we don't do this, we don't do that. But this is one of those things that for trombone is actually pretty critical. Is on the intonation side of things, and why that it becomes so critical later on is the intonation and the various partials. And for us, we can make adjustments on the slide physically instead of trying to bend our pitch and do things with our chops that can affect our tone quality. So for us, I think it's better that you have a little bit of room, that you can make those up and down adjustments, and there's a million things that can affect intonation, right? It could be the heat, the humidity, whether we're warmed up or not, all those different things. But there's also specific tendencies for the different partials, right? And depending on, and also some things that might be specific to a specific instrument. But in general, we know that the first partial, which is a pedal tone, second partial should both be in tune in one position, and that's where I would tune first position. The F, which is the third partial, that middle kind of middle F that maybe a lot of people start on. That one is not actually in first position, and not in the same first position as the B flats. And then you go up to the tuning B flat, and then you go to the D above that. That's actually a little flat. It needs to come up a little bit. It's like maybe 10, 12, 13 cents flat, so you might need to adjust up. Now, this may not really affect teachers at, say, the middle school level, where there's just intonation issues, that people are working through. They're trying to develop their ears, all this stuff. They don't necessarily play that well in tune. But as they grow and develop, these things actually start to get more noticeable. But we can actually do something to fix them, and that knowing when these things come up is actually really important.
Yeah, no, I love that whole point. And really, so as an instrumentalist who had to use their embouchure and their chops to adjust pitches and things, although I did have some things I could do with the bell on my French horn, as we've noticed. Mm-hmm. But really, the trombone is one big giant tuning slide. So can we say that there's no excuse really for a trombone not to be able to adjust and be in tune all the time?
Absolutely. I think that is 100% true. And if somebody is out of tune, they should be able to make that adjustment. And that's where leaving room in first position, like it's not all the way in. So you can make those adjustments because you might be a little flat. And, we start getting into different chord tones and where they should be in the chord and where they should be raised or lowered, all those different things. And you can actually do that if you leave some space.
I love that. And, this is interesting because it's parallels to like when I was talking about all the woodwind, private lesson teachers, they're talking about alternate fingers and things that they use to adjust pitches on certain notes. And the instrumentalist, the musician, needs to learn what those are. Here, you're saying the tendencies for your instrument, and you can adjust automatically to try to make it better in tune. So it seems like it should be easy to play in tune on the trombone. Yes,
it is once you develop the ears. And I'm glad you mentioned alternate fingerings, because that's something I wanted to address too for trombone. That's critical for trombone players, and it's the one thing I think that most definitely on the beginning school levels, middle school, early high school, that stuff, they every director just hates it. They say don't play your F in sixth position, don't play your B flat in fifth position, all those different things. I sent you that graphic. If you could get that pulled up, and I can show you what I mean. So this is a graphic. This image is not mine. I stole this from an app that is just a kind of a novelty app. The app is called iBone, and it was originally released on the iPhone way back when, like at the beginning of all this, of touchscreens and all that stuff. And I got it as just a fun little novelty app. You can slide around on it and bend pitches, and it'll play notes and all these things. You just go all over it. It's a lot of fun, but it's not really a serious musical tool by itself. But it is fun, and it could be something that could help keep some of your trombone players engaged. They have something fun to do that's trombone specific. But so I took a screenshot of it, and one thing I use this with all my students now. So you can see the little red markings on here. All the white letters is what was originally on the app itself. And so on the bottom line, you have your low B flat and the white letters. And then I had to write in the red letters below that. That's going to be all those pedal tones. Those are the actual fundamental root of the instrument. So when I talk about first partial, second partial, that's starting on that red line is first partial. All right. And the arrows here indicate what the tuning tendencies are for each partial. And so for, you can see on the F partial there, which is our third partial, that's going to be slightly sharp, and you'll need to adjust down a little bit. Again, at the lower grade levels, probably not critical, because they're from one trombone player to the next, they may not even have an idea of what pitch should be, right? But the better they are, this is going to become more important. And so you got the tuning B flat. There's no adjustment there. That should be where you tune your B flat. The D is a little flat, so it should come up a little bit. So that's why it's one little tiny arrow. And then we get to the sixth partial, and we have the F. And so sixth partial, and euphonium players, tuba players, trumpet players, they all know that sixth partial, whatever they're playing, is always going to be sharp. So they need to make adjustments. For us, we can do that physically. So I have a bigger arrow here. It's a little arrow with a stem. It means it's a bigger jump. You know, that we need to bring it down. When I say to bring it down a little bit, or bring it up, so the little ones might be 1/4 of an inch, and the F on the sixth partial might be like 1/2 an inch. But the one thing I really love about this chart is that it's an excellent indicator of what alternate positions are available to a student, to a trombone player, and we tend to think of, the normal notes or the normal positions, and we get really kind of stuck on those. Like, I have to play my high D in first position. Well, you don't. You can play it in fourth, and it makes a lot of sense to play it in fourth if, say, you're playing an E flat major scale. So you have that C in third, the sixth of the E flat scale, D in fourth, and E flat in first. So I can show that on trombone. So what I'm talking about here on the fourth position D, that's above the staff. So if you're moving, this is where I'm talking about. So this, if I can find it, get my face in there, in the hand of one. Where's that at? There, this one. All right. So we're at fourth position. Now, be mindful that it's also in the sixth partial, so we'll have to make an adjustment. So it's not the same fourth position as the D down below. But you'll make an adjustment. So if you're playing that major E flat scale, so you go from the C to the D to the E flat, and that's a smaller movement that we can make that makes it much more efficient versus going from third to first to third. So we're going this far back and forth versus this far back and forth. And that's one of the first ones actually it's probably the second one I teach. The first one that I teach is F in sixth position, and I teach that actually to my beginning students as well. Once we learn sixth position and we're playing C's out there, I teach them that there's an F right above it, and I show them that chart. And they say, here's a C, here's an F. And then it goes up, and you can see, Elliot, this F major triad, this FAC and all up. So that gives you a whole set of notes there that you can start to think about. Now, that might be more advanced than the typical sixth grader might be thinking about, but I have found that a lot of them really seem to enjoy this idea that they can kind of hack the trombone. They're like, oh, I can do something. This is not the normal way to do it. And they have fun with that.
Right, and I would think that students would get excited about learning all these things about their instrument, right? Like, I would think it'd be cool that I can play note 2 different ways depending on where I am. Like, and why not start teaching them about some of these adjustments early on? Just as, like you said, this is where first is. Like, this is just how they're learning to play their horn. I think students can adjust and learn these things really naturally if you don't make it like it's something weird or different. This is just what we learn for trombone, and they're probably able to do a lot more than we think.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why I've been experimenting the past few years of just like, as soon as we get to certain spots, I teach them right away. And so it's just not, they don't have, like, yes, this may be my normal position, but that I don't even necessarily teach as an alternate position anymore. More so much as an optional position. It's like, you can play it here or you can play it here, whatever makes sense. And really, when we start seeing like the middle school band level of music, we see a lot of, like, say, B flat major, where you're playing C's and F's close together instead of going back and forth in this kind of sawing motion, adding a lot of sound or movement to the sound. We can eliminate that by learning how to play F in sixth position. So you go from C to F to a G. So you go 6, 6, 4. And that just makes it a lot shorter. So yeah, that's kind of my, like I said, I start teaching that early now, and they seem to grasp it pretty quickly. But I just want to understand, a lot of teachers, they have a lot of students sometimes. They can't necessarily work one-on-one and like show them where these things are. But yeah, I've had a lot of students that they get super excited about it. It's like, I can play F in sixth position. I can play B flat in fifth. Like, yeah, you can.
Yeah, and this is a great example of the kind of thing I was wanting us to talk about on this conversation, because it's like, okay, as long as I'm aware that this is part of playing the trombone, right? There's all these optional ways of doing notes and whatever, then I don't even necessarily have to know all of it, but I can even say like, hey, first trombone high school kid, let's make sure everybody understands blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like, just being aware of the phenomenon is what I was sort of wanting to get at.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You don't necessarily need to be super deep into the trombone world. It's like, hey, these are options, and these are things that are actually in every beginning band book I've seen. They'll say, on the slide position charts, C or F is in first or sixth,
right?
And the B flat, it's in first or fifth. The B flat on top of the staff.
Yeah, good.
So,
all right. So where would you like to go next? What else would you want me to know about the trombone?
So the next thing I would want the director to know, especially this is going to be really critical for your sort of intermediate level kids. This is the kids that just bought their first F attachment trombone. And this is very critical stuff too, because so we know there's 7, I'll call them buckets, because as you know, there's not a pure, there's only like maybe a few notes in a pure position, like B flat should be in first and A should be in second, whereas the D and the F might need to adjust. So now you have these little micro positions that are in between. And there are 7 of those, 7 positions that we're taught. On F attachment, that is not the case. And as we know, if you've ever seen a guitar fretboard, on the high end, they're real close together. And then on the low end, they're much further apart. It's the same thing for trombone. So I'll show my bass trombone here. Pretend this is just an F attachment. But when we start using the F attachment, we can tune the first position to line up to where it should be. And that you're tuning to the F, by the way. And so tune the F to where your normal first position is. But if you're going to play, and this could be a below the staff F, or it could be middle F. But when you go play E, it's not in our normal second position. It's going to be a little bit longer. And so basically what this means is, like, the more slide, the more positions that you use, the more slide you're using, the more you need. So instead of being in a, say, second position here, I play my low E, it may be here. And this could also apply to your B natural. So this is a pretty sizable tuning adjustment that needs to be made. And I actually had a friend come to me once. He was like, "Why do my bass trombone players play out of tune?" And there could be a lot of reasons, but the main one is probably they're just not playing in the right positions. And they don't know that second position on the trigger side is not the same thing as second position on the open horn side. And so that's how I try to teach it.
So sort of like the partials are more open, lower. Am I understanding this correctly? And the higher the notes get, the closer together they are. Am I understanding that correctly?
In the sense that of how much slide you're using.
Yes.
To begin. So yeah. So if you're on the same partial, yes, there'll be the even on the open horn, say first to second position might be that big, and then first or second to third might be that big, third to fourth, and so it gets slightly larger. But if you take that same idea and you start now in sixth position, which is what the F attachment brings, is that now you've added that extra length of tubing. You can tune that to be in first position, but then everything else is going to be further along the way. So now there's only 6 positions that are possible.
Oh, I see. Okay, so now I understand. So with that F attachment on the low notes, we have more space we have to adjust on our slide positions. Right. Okay, that's something else good to know.
So let me, and just real quick on that. So now third position, and most people, they only learn that they play a C in first position, but there's a whole 6 set of positions here. So you got your B natural and B flat, which is super handy. But now this is more like a fourth position than a third position that we would typically think of. But as far as the trigger side, it's right there. It's a long position, and it gets longer and longer as it goes. And that's also doubly true when you start using 2 valves. You've now added 6 positions, and then in my case, I have a G flat slot or G flat attachment on my second one. 5 more positions, and so they get further and further away. And so I can tune the first position in first position, but then which was a low D, by the way. My second position is almost third, if not close to third.
Okay, so it's good for me to understand as I'm working with those trombone kids that if they have those attachments and they're playing those lower notes, that they're going to have to adjust their slide to get that tuning. And hopefully at this point, if they're moving up to that horn, that their ears are getting really good, and they should be able to figure that out, right?
They should be able to, but it's surprising. But when we start getting to like that pedal register and low register, like they're just trying to play the note and get it out in some cases. So they're thinking I need to adjust my fourth position much further out.
So if you're in a private lesson if you're doing a private lesson with a trombone student trying to learn those low notes, you just teach them the slide positions are bigger. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Awesome. And so I sent you those multiple graphics, but and if anybody wants those, we can send those out. They're free to hand out. But there's a chart that is bass trombone specific that will show where your open positions are, where your first valve positions are, and where your combination positions are. And you start to see that they move further out, and it's more. And so when you add both valves, now you only have 5 positions on that side of the horn.
Okay, very cool. So this is helpful stuff. I feel good that's been explained to me, and I'm clearer on it now than I was before. So very good. Okay, now what else do you want me to know about trombone?
What else? So, and I think the most common thing that we know about brass instruments in general is that they're wind operated. All right, so all the teaching around that is basically the same. I will say, especially when it comes to bass trombone playing, if you're trying to start a new bass trombone student, and you're telling them more air, all that stuff, that's not always true, because they might misinterpret that as just play as much air as you can through any position. Like, oh, it plays B flat, it's just a lot of air. Yes, it is more air, but it's instead of a stream of air, a more pointed one, this is a broader set of air. So it might be more air, but it's going to be moving slower because it's a bigger air column. So if they want to get those notes effectively, is to essentially relax and let that air come out more naturally, and you'll get big, huge pedal notes with great sound that way.
Okay, so I want to make sure I understand that, because this seems like a concept that would be tricky for a student to learn. So you're saying it's not more air doesn't always mean fast air? Is this the distinction?
No. So this is like think of a volume of air versus a speed of air. So the speed of air is more going to affect the pitch. So that's going to make our lips vibrate at a certain frequency. But if we're trying to play these lower notes, we don't want to play at a higher frequency. We want to play a lower one, and that's going to require us to slow that air down. And it's just more. And we talk about for trombones, like you may have fast air being this kind of blowing off hot soup kind of thing, versus this warm air that's going to be very slow. And it's more like fog in a mirror kind of air. So you just really open it up and just let it go. And it's something that's like taking me a while to, as a bass trombonist, like even when I'm trying to play a huge note down there, to not overdo it, because I actually need to keep that air slow.
Okay, so this is really important, I think, and I think brass players understand this sort of concept, but the volume of air and the speed of air are not the same thing, and especially with those low notes, you have to learn how to control that. Does this have anything to do with trombones famously just always playing 5 Fs all the time, or is that just one of those band tropes, orchestra tropes?
So yeah, I think there's that is guilty as charged kind of moment. It's like, and I was actually I just played a concert. I was hired to play with a local symphony, and I was playing. It was like a Halloween concert, bass trombone stuff. I was like, Night on Bald Mountain, all these different things. Like, oh, these are huge, bass trombone moments. I got to go for this, and just filling the hall. But yeah, so we want them to play full and with beautiful sound, and not with a gross sound, right? Like, yes, it's okay to, but that's the other thing I teach a lot is like, it's okay to put some volume behind it. And because a lot of times when I see, especially at the younger end and the younger ages, they're telling them to play softer constantly. And maybe that's because they are just playing too loud, or they just don't want to hear them because they may have a bad sound. But the real cure is that using more air more efficiently.
Okay, so this is really important, I think, because it's all about the way you're using your air and the sound quality, right? And I have to tell you, Josh, I would be very disappointed if you had not filled the hall during Bald Mountain, at a concert. I mean, come on, like that has to happen. And that's one of the real joys of playing bass trombone, right? I mean, come on, you live for that stuff.
Yeah, we don't get a lot of moments like that. So when they happen, I do take full every option to actually do that. Like,
I love that.
But it is something, when I first started playing bass trombone as a freshman in high school, I had those moments where my teacher would just like, just play that note as loud as you can. And okay, so I'm learning to play this stuff, and it actually came out very well. And it was a pedal B flat that was just like on a jazz piece, and it was just a really effective note that you really wanted to kind of just pound on a little bit. But I would say it's okay to give them permission to play out, because that's if they're constantly backing off, then they're probably shrinking and not using their air very well. They're just using minimal air, and they get a bad sound.
Exactly. All right. So air is important, and the quality and the speed and the tone, all of those things are ingredients here that really matter for trombones. And I got to tell you, I love a great trombone section and a great dark trombone sound. Like that makes me super happy anytime. So I think I like that a lot. Okay. Are there other things that you came in ready to share? I don't know how much you got, if these are more.
Oh yeah. Let me see what else I have here. And I'll kind of frame this next one as melodic inclusion. So as trombone players, we are often not the melody, right? And at best, we might be doing a harmonic, thing, as a section. So I would say for teachers, find something that's going to interest the trombone players. And if it's not something that you can program necessarily, give them something to work on separately. And like, if it's not, going to fit in your Christmas show, that's fine. And all they have is dotted half notes and all that through a piece. give them something else to work on. Yes, we want them to have a beautiful sound and all that stuff, which, by the way, I'll pause just for a second on that. I truly 100% believe in the magic of long tones. So that we need to do that early on every day. I do this with all my students. The first thing we do, even if you've been playing throughout the day, so you get the horn out of the case, do some long tones, and really going to get your face set and ready. But as a matter of practice, that's the most efficient way to build a good sound. And it's just really having the horn on your face a lot longer time and getting more value out of that. And I lost track.
Yeah, no, I love that. So the value of the long tones, yes, but you were talking about melodic conclusion, and man, I'm loving that you're talking about this. So keep going with that.
Oh yeah, so yeah, the melodic conclusion. Yeah, your charts may not have it, and there may be a hole, and so you have a section of trombone players sitting back there, and we're obviously very famous for being very serious people at all times, which is of course not true. We tend to be goofballs, and I think probably a lot of that stems from our parts are boring. So if you have a younger group of kids, and you're going to sit there and work with the clarinets and the flutes on the melody and stuff, it probably wouldn't hurt to write that melody out for your trombone players, just as a matter of just something to learn and something to play, and not necessarily as something you're going to put in the show, but that they're actually learning how to play different things with their horn. Because what we don't get a lot of is these melodic lines that actually challenge us a little bit.
Which is too bad. So let's try to find some more music, everybody, to keep those trombone players happy and learning and growing, and not just playing those boring half notes. That's not appropriate for anybody. And I love your idea of, okay, so send them out and let them do on small ensemble chamber, something, like trios. Yeah. Keep those kids growing and doing, and then include that on your concert. Why not throw that in right now? And between these songs, here's the trombones. I think this is a great idea to keep challenging them.
Yeah, and then the next thing I think is really critical for any teacher, for any instrument for that matter, is that the students need to know what you want from them. And you can say, I want this big warm sound, I want this, I want that. Well, cool. What does that sound like? Who do you want me to sound like? Are you wanting me to sound like Joe Alessi and New York Phil? Are you wanting me to sound like the trombone players from the Stan Kenton Big Band, or do you want me to sound like something else? So they need examples of what a good trombone sound is, and so I think that's going to be very critical. And it's not just something like, yes, it's good to let them listen to a recording of the New York Phil. Sure, that's great, but something that's going to be even more zeroed in on what a good trombone player, what kind of sounds a good trombone player can make.
Okay, fantastic point. And we need to let those students find and explore and give them examples of what great trombone song. And also, of course, I feel like, as you said, this is true on any instrument, they need to know what's possible, right? Like, yes. I think that's actually true on any part of our activity. Certainly, I know that's true about marching bands, winter guards, drum lines, everybody. You have to show them what's possible, what the great groups are doing, what the great musicians sound like. How could you not want to hear that? If you're a trombone player and you're wanting to be a great trombone player, well, who are the best and what do they sound like? And let me listen to some of that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a wide range. I mean, you can go for this nice big concert, dark, warm sound that you'll get on the big concert tenor horn that's perfect for a concert band or an orchestra. But that may not be the same sound that you want in your jazz program. And this is another point I wanted to make. If you have kids that have their student model straight, no F attachment horn, and it's a good, decent horn, decent quality, still in good shape, don't tell them not to get rid of that. Don't sell it. Don't get rid of it. Make sure you keep it in good shape. It's actually a pretty decent horn to use in their jazz band. And that's going to give you a slightly brighter sound, which is more appropriate for jazz and pop kind of settings. So yeah, don't discourage the use of those. I actually see some teachers sometimes tell them to use their concert horn, the F attachments, as like a first or second part on a jazz band. And it's typically not the sound you want, but you can definitely use those straight tenors, the student models. And I actually did a poll of this on the Trombone Facebook page. and several hundred people responded, and roughly 80% or so said use the student model horn over the professional F attachment. And I thought that was fascinating. It's like if I limit it to just those two choices, because I understand, families don't necessarily have the money to have 3 or 4 professional grade horns. But if you have that good student model, and you have that good, intermediate or professional horn with the F attachment, you can still use that student model for jazz band, pep band, whatever kind of stuff on the side.
That is great advice. I'm loving this, Josh. Like, that is great advice, because you're absolutely right. We have a specific sound we want in our jazz bands, and those tenor horns are going to be exactly what that needs to be. And why not? Yeah, keep your horn. That is fantastic advice. And listen, everybody, 80% of trombone players all agreed. Like, this is strong. This is strong stuff. I love that you did that, Josh. And that's what I would think too. So I'm not even a trombone player, but it makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, and I wanted to limit my own perception, my own bias. I was like, this is our option. Would you play this or that? And they said, play the student model horn.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome. Okay. This has been awesome. Is there more? Any last tips that you want to add, or is there a lot more?
There's a little bit more here. That I can,
great.
Kind of touch on. And I think the last big category is slide technique, right? Because slide instrument, we need to learn how to use that slide, but we can't do that until we have good slide maintenance. So first step with that, yes, we may show them like, use your slide lubricant, all these different things. There's a couple that I like that eliminate a lot of extra steps, but at a base level, you want your trombone players regularly, at least weekly, depending on how often they're playing. If not, with at least up to a couple times a week, or even as much as every day, that they're cleaning their slide off. And all that is taking a rag, wipe it off, or a paper towel, whatever you have, if they have access to, wipe it off. Some have polishing cloths too. They can use that and just wipe the old stuff off, put the new stuff on, get water on it, and you're good to go. This should take about a minute. And I understand, like, your 6th graders, they'll take about 30 minutes to figure that out. But that's okay. They need that practice. And it's probably worth doing that in class a few times so they get used to it. And so they can get a little bit quicker with it and more efficient with it. But they can't play their slide effectively if it doesn't move. And I see it all the time where, they're trying to play along and it's just sticking. Like, they're going from first, second, and they can't even move the slide, and they have to use more force. And so you get this jerkiness to the sound that you don't want. And that's very easily eliminated by just keeping the slide clean and putting some fresh slide lubricant on it that they can use. I am a fan of 1 bottle solutions. So if I'm allowed to say, their Slido Mix has 2 bottles, but now they have a single bottle solution that has a black top on it that you can just put a couple drops. That's it. Just a couple drops on the end of the slide. At the stockings, there's little visible parts that are a little bit bigger at the bottom of the slide, around sixth position. A couple drops on each slide, and move that around. What you don't want to do is have them dumping a lot on there, because it's going to be either wasteful and also it's just going to gum it up. So a little bit of slide lubricant, some water, and they're good to go. The other one that I use now most consistently is Yamaha has a slide lubricant they use. It comes in a purple bottle. But once we get that figured out, we can start getting into like slide technique. And the one I wanted to talk about here was this is not slide technique, not just moving back and forth. Notice I'm keeping my hand rigid. We need to get this opened up. Yes, they'll need to move their arms, especially if they're little. They'll need to move their arms at some point. But really, doing some exercises where they get to keep their arm still, and they're moving, say, you start in first position, but you're thinking in second position. So like, this is second position, this is first position, back to second, to third. So you can get them moving this around. And then you can even start incorporating more finger movement, and they do this at a younger level, so they get really comfortable with it early on. So I'd be going, can see my fingers a little better here. Like you might be pushing the slide up to get another position higher. Say you're in third position, you're trying to get up to first, and you might be just like that. And to get to fifth, you might be opening the hand. I get that out there. Opening the fingers up to get good movement. And so circling all the way back around now to the chart that I showed earlier with all of those different positions, that using alternate position is a part of slide technique. And a couple of rules of thumb there is that you want to keep things going in the same direction. And if it's within, you can drop down a partial to get to the next thing, you could do that. But you want to try to keep things flowing smoothly that way versus just sawing motion to go between notes.
Okay, I love that. It just sounds like it's all about efficiency, right? Not only for just to be able to do it quickly, but also I would think that there's like body mechanic stuff with your arm that can start to become a problem if you're actually not using that correct technique. Yeah,
and it's one of the, like going to to the idea of introducing the movement into the sound. Like we talk about marching band kids, or like, hey, keep your feet out of your sound. Same idea here. It's like you don't want your arm moving a lot because that's going to affect your face and your chest and all that stuff, making everything else move. That can affect the sound.
Okay, I love it. This is great stuff, man. It's just, I love that you're doing exactly what I wanted you to do, Josh, which is you're explaining basic things about playing the trombone well that I just need to be aware of, right? And if as an instructor, I don't necessarily need to be able to do all of these things, but I need to know that it's part of playing the trombone correctly. And that's good knowledge for me to have. So you are hitting home runs here as far as I'm concerned in sharing this information. I'm loving it.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure that somebody may have some questions for you, wants to reach out to you, ask you some questions, get you to work with their group, whatever. Where would they reach you, Josh?
So you can reach me directly on Facebook if you have an account there. My email address is josh.reynolds3@gmail.com. And the best way to get a hold of me is my cell phone. And that's 317-450-2011.
Say that number one more time.
It is 317-450-2011.
Okay, well, thank you for making that information available. And listen, everybody, Josh clearly knows what he's talking about. And if you have trombone-specific stuff or, gosh, I think there's all kinds of things you could possibly help them with, Josh. So thank you so much for that. So I have one final question I've been asking everyone this as I'm having these conversations with these private instructors, private lesson teachers. So you've kind of mentioned this a lot already, but I'm still going to ask you, which is, why do you love the trombone? Like, why do you love playing trombone, Josh?
I fell in love with trombone, as a middle school student when I started playing at 11, and I just love all the wide variety of things you can do with trombone. It is so flexible as an instrument that it really. I've played in the military on trombone, on bass trombone, played in jazz bands, clown bands. I've played in all about any kind of organization, and that there's not much I haven't played, which I think is just kind of awesome. Because if I find something, I'd really like to play that, I can do it, and I can get the right people together, and we can sit down and play some polka or whatever, and it's just a good time. And being able to actually get to a point where I enjoy the music that I play, or that I'm creating. That's been a long journey. I know a lot of us kind of say, we always kind of are our own worst critics, but I just absolutely love everything about it, and being able to do all those things that I always wanted to do as a kid. Like, oh man, that guy's awesome. I love to play like that, and then like all of a sudden, I can do that. And I'm like, that's great. I love that. So that kind of self-realization, just keep putting in the work, and something great can come of it. And it's just consistent work over a long period of time, and you can start getting little victories, and it's really kind of awesome.
I love that answer, Josh, because that's what every musician wants, right? Is to be so accomplished on their instrument they can sit down and have fun playing any kind of thing with whoever, and just love making music in all those different ways. And I have to tell you, God, I cannot imagine anything that sounds more fun than playing trombone in a clown band. Like that just sounds like a really good time.
It was, and man, we went. They had gigs literally all over the world, and it's just nuts. So I've had a very kind of fortunate musical journey over the years, and I couldn't be happier about it. And I just love that I'm trying to get out there more and be even more proactive and putting myself out there so people can reach me and they have questions. I can share this with people.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing your expertise with me and anybody that might see this in the future, because I think you've given us a lot of really great information. You clearly love the instrument and you've loved playing it, and that's come through very clearly as you've had this whole conversation. So, Josh, thank you for your time and thanks for sharing all this information about the trombone.
All right, thank you, Tim.
Make sure you watch for all the releases in this series, and we hope you'll subscribe here at YouTube so that you don't miss a single release. Thank you for watching.
Marching Arts Education is the home of the Marching Roundtable podcast. We give you access to the top marching arts professionals through live webinars, podcasts, videos, interviews, and online coursework. With over 1,000 podcasts and hundreds of webinars and videos, there are hours of great professional development for you and your staff. Sign up for a membership to Marching Arts Education to get complete access to all webinars, videos, and podcasts, plus discounts on coursework. Many directors are using professional development funds through their school or boosters to make these resources available to their staff. Imagine what you could do with so many great new ideas from the top professionals in our activity. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and sign up for our newsletter to find out about the latest podcasts, webinars, and new content. Find all of this and sign up at marchingartseducation.com.